welcome back, everybody, to week number three, maybe, I think, is where we're at now in the SCC. We're over in EU still. My name is Dolson. Ryan Agro Bailey joins me to talk a matchup that I think at the beginning of the split and even into qualifiers, we figured maybe a close one. But the last time these two teams met, the Poppies and Freshly Forged, it was anything but close, as the Poppies in that qualifier week just kind of steamrolled Freshly Forged.
Yeah, if you haven't been paying a whole lot of attention to the SCC and the qualifier or anything like that, and you look at these two rosters, you think, okay, it makes sense that these two teams aren't particularly close. Freshly Forged should be the superior team, but that's not been the case. Freshly Forged has looked very, very weak in comparison to how we expected them to look. And the Poppies, I think, have looked better than how we expected them to look. And that combination has led to the Poppies really looking solid and ultimately dominating Freshly Forged in those qualifiers a couple weeks ago. But that was a couple weeks ago. So maybe Freshly Forged has made some adjustments. Maybe they can use that experience that they have under their belts to try and turn this matchup around. But on the last time, I mean, it was two 25-ish minute games, if my memory serves me properly. Right. It wasn't particularly close.
Well, Freshly Forged one win up to this point. There's only been 2 weeks, but they beat Just F6, a team that is still searching for their first win here in the SEC over in EU. So maybe Freshly Forged gets a little momentum going today off the back of a 2-0 win last week over Just F6. But the Poppies, certainly no team to scoff at. As we jump into picks and bans for game number one, Yemoja, no surprise there, I don't think, Ryan. We have seen a team or two maybe let her through, but I think that's the type of ban where if you're not going to ban her, either you need to pick her or you need to have an ironclad strategy for dealing with that Yemoja.
She just does so much in these team fights. She's really just a great team fighting god, and usually with great team fighting gods, they don't have great laning phases, and that's just not the case for Yemoja either because of her chain stun potential, her ability to pressure your relics from minute one, literally level one. She can insta-kill you basically by herself with chain stuns. It's something you have to account for at all points, so I agree. You have to either come in with a really, really good strategy against this goddess, or you should probably just ban her most of the time. That's a safer option.
Maybe slightly curious here is Hell being banned out, and maybe it should be less so curious because we saw a little bit of Hell in set number one. But Fafnir as well, another god that we saw a couple of times in set number one, and maybe that's more of an EU preference, but first picked overall here by the Poppies. They've got a lot of confidence in that Guardian.
They do, and it's clear that they want to keep that out of Kalas' hands, but Kalas goes for one of his signature picks anyways in Athena, so I'm a little bit surprised, but now it's starting to make some sense, because Poppies, they know that they want to keep Fafnir out of Kalas' hands, and then it's, well, if we have the Fafnir, we may as well go in with this auto-attack-centric composition. We have not seen any Freya at all, really, at this level, so we'll see how she can perform, but you've got the double Hunter, one of them's magical in Freya, but double auto-attack-based character in Chernobog and Freya alongside that coerce the Fafnir is going to provide. The Poppies are clearly coming with a game plan, and I like it quite a bit, but Freshly Forged, they've got a very, very strong trio right off the bat in their mid 3v3, which is Athena, Kukulkan, and Hun Batz. Those characters really punish you in Athena and Hun Batz if you don't have purification beads, so it's going to be a lot of pressure on the relics of the Poppies in this game.
Yeah, talk about presence in the Hun Batz, a god that has, again, largely been in that pick or ban category. So Freshly Forged are going to find themselves maybe a small advantage jungle-wise, as Poppy's still likely looking for their jungler. They're going to pick up an On Her as well here, Freshly Forged. A god that Arkle, just in the previous set, kind of performed a masterclass on. We haven't quite seen him in that immediate lock-in On Her every single time conversation, but the potency and the potential is obviously still there.
And it's a god that, again, punishes you if you don't have purification beads and can follow up with Athena taunt. So it fits this composition perfectly for Freshly Forged. Maybe you can make the argument that you need a little bit more early game pressure than something like On Her provides. On Her provides good kill pressure, but not good lane clear. So maybe you needed something a little bit more lane cleary, but I don't really think that's the case. Freshly Forged, this team composition is all about grouping up and running it down at the Poppies. With the Poppies, they have a lot of objective control. They've got a lot of objective burn, but not great objective secure. So they're going to have to take care of Pretty Prime on that Kukulkan if they want to start burning those objectives.
Well, it's time to see if Freshly Forged can keep the momentum going and grow on all of that potential that the names of that roster brings up against the Poppies in game number one. And we sort of talked about it at the very beginning of Picks and Bans. We figured it was going to be Kalas may be on that Athena, but they're going to send Athena into that solo lane and put Kalas on that Terra instead over in the duo.
Very surprised. I mean, I feel like that you really want that Athena in the 3v3 as much as you can, but it seems like they're willing to just use that global presence. There's certainly a really big advantage to having that Athena in the solo lane because she can use that global presence anytime and not miss out too much you'd ideally like to find, but still surprised that it doesn't go over to Kalas in his premier pick. Usually Terra's also a god that performs a little bit better with a lot of farm in comparison, but maybe it's because of these subs for Freshly Forged. I mean, normally we see Deathwalker over there in the solo lane, not Mr. Crunchy. Normally we see Joshi in the ADC role, not, I don't know how to pronounce that name. That's a pretty big difference between Joshi and a guy whose name I don't know need to pronounce. So I think that's going to be a pretty big deal for these two, for this game at least.
I'm going to say Okeanos and just roll with it. And
I'm fine with that.
Right, then
I like that.
If that's the closest I think I'm going to get. But a topic that you sort of brought up, and you know, it's kind of the obvious thing for the Poppies, that they've obviously gone Freya and then Chernobog in that middle lane, double hunter, double ranged composition. Are you at all concerned, though, at the lack of maybe a true mage, in the sense that with Kukulkan for Freshly Forged, I feel like you're going to have plenty of control, long-range poke maybe in that middle lane, and some good objectives secure in these fights?
Oh, Fails going to go in on Warchi here, but Okeanos already too low. That's going to be first blood, and Fails is going to follow. No jump for him. He's dead to rights. Good use of patience on no purification beads. And what I was going to say is that while there isn't a whole lot of press 4 and insta-kill you like a lot of other traditional mages, Freya insta-kills you in just 3 to 4 autos. She's going to do it. You've got plenty of magical damage, so no, I'm not concerned at the lack of magical damage. I'm more concerned at the lack of AoE damage for the Poppies. It's a little bit single target, but Creed has a great AoE ult that's going to stun out multiple people. You can still punish people for grouping up a little bit too much. I think the Poppies have a pretty solid comp.
Collapse could be in here. It is a 3 versus 2. Kalas is low. Warchi trying to get himself out of this one on the back of an early kill in this game, looking to avoid a death on his side. He is going to be out of range, but between the Tier 1 and Tier 2 towers, no area for escape. It's just a matter of who finds the kill, and it is Fails on the Hunbats, who's going to get the first kill in this game for Freshly Forged. So while Warchi grabs a kill on that Freya, maybe pulls a little bit of a lead for the Poppies, and then a kill for Draco Marino as well. Fails on that Hunbats now as a kill in his belt to go impact other parts of the map.
That's huge that Fails gets that kill, and it's a heads-up play to go back to that Duel Links. I don't think a lot of junglers would have done that. Speed buff was up on the other side of the map. Blue buff was up. This is going to hurt Mr. Crunchy. A good recognition by Marcus and Creed that blue buff's going to be up and they can invade. A little surprised that Marcus doesn't try and go for the speed buff or the enemy back harpies. I think that's a little bit of a missed opportunity there by the Awilix. But overall, I think that's an understandable overextension by the Poppies. If Warchi and Draco are paying attention, which I'm sure they are, they know that speed and blue are coming up on the right side of the map. So they're thinking that Fails is definitely going over there, so they're safe because they can win the 2v2. They can't win the 3v2. And so that rotation from Fails really caught the duo lane from the Poppies off guard.
Well, Okeanos was at least able to grab an assist in that small purple buff engagement that resulted in Warchi going down. So what was a pretty discrepant duo lane has now at least been pulled back just slightly, where Okeanos maybe feels a little bit more comfortable in that matchup. And you brought her up just briefly. I feel like we haven't seen Awilix really in a long time, or she's dipped her toe into these matches every once in a while. Hunbat's obviously much more prevalent. What do you look for out of Marcus here in the early game and trying to find a lead for his team?
I think that Awilix is really thought of as this early game pressure god, and she can be. She can really snowball games quite well with or against the right composition. And in this game, you're really looking for Marcus to pick on Fails and Okeanos, and you can already see the impact that Marcus has made, even though he probably doesn't have any player damage at all, in the sense that he's forced Fails to pick up beads instead of the blink that the Hunbats would normally like in that first relic slot, just because of the threat of Gravity Surge. But I think of Awilix as this team fight initiator in the mid game, where she can really find good flanks. She can 1v1 just about anybody through the mid game with use of that ultimate. It's not just the pullback on the jump. It's a huge attack speed and power stim that I don't think gets really enough credit for how strong that is. And so I'm looking for Marcus to basically do what he's done. Put pressure on the enemy jungle, try and get some invades because people don't want to fight him. But don't think that a Wilix is going to fall off 20 minutes in. I think that a Wilix can, with the right sort of fight selection, still be very, very impactful at that point in the game. It's just trying to find your 1v1s or your 2v2s, and that's where she can really shine. But overall, it's to make sure that whenever Fails or Okeanos jump, that they have to think about where this Wilix is.
And I really look at sort of one thing you mentioned there, and that's just being annoying in the enemy jungle. And although it's been a quiet first couple of minutes here from Marcus, hasn't really, found many ganks that he's super happy with. Moving in, grabbing a blue buff, especially for Creed in the freshly forged jungle, little things like that have gone the way of the Poppies here in this early game. And Marcus about a half level ahead of Fails, so maybe reaching level 7 a little bit before Fails on the opposite side. They haven't quite returned down to this duo lane from what we've seen from Fails in the early game, so maybe a little bit surprised. He is rotating down here now, maybe for a counter gank, but Marcus is in range as well. And it looks like that presence is just enough to make Fails think twice. But I still kind of stand by that. I think Marcus has done a good enough job to find himself a lead. Warchi is going to take to the skies, and that's an easy kill onto Okeanos. Kalas is going to get a couple of roots on his way out, but a Banish takes him up into the air. A nice stun, but he's plenty tanky enough to shrug off that damage. Where we stand, that's still kill number 2 on the board here for Warchi, with Fails maybe trying to close the gap.
But without Blink, this is going to be very difficult for Fails to do so, and that's where the impact of not having that really is. Can you tell Warchi's played a lot of Freya, by the way? He knows exactly how much damage he needs in order to get that kill. And Okeanos, you kind of have to bait out and try and juke at least one of the shots with the jump. Instead, he uses it right away, and Warchi just waits it out very, very nicely. You can, when you know that the Freya has to land all 3 of those shots in order to kill you, you don't need to jump before the first one, or in between the first and the second. Just jump the third. You know you have that duration kind of in mind. A little bit of panic, I think, by Okeanos, who still looks like he's trying to find his footing in this competitive setting.
And you got to be nervous, I think, if you're freshly forged. I mean, Freya obviously sort of maybe shines in the late game when you get the full item build online. She is near impossible to 1v1 with full cooldowns available. But it's not like she has an early game to scoff at either, right? I mean, if you're freshly forged, it seems like now that you've given 2 kills and an assist over to this Freya, the point in the game where she's maybe at her weakest has already started to pass her by.
Agreed, and she's getting close to her Bancroft's talent. I mean, Okeanos is going to be in trouble this game. And look at Warchi, he's gunning for him right away, but he's in trouble now.
He does take to the skies and plug some good damage down. Not enough to get rid of Kalas. That's a good Fear No Evil from Fails to disengage some of this fight, but Chekio, he rejoins in the backline, grabs a kill on a Kalas and makes good on the setup that Warchi was able to find, but the fight still maybe rages on with Fails dropping down. Draco Marino, he's chosen the wrong path back into the duo lane. Pops the ultimate and is able to jump off. Spirit of the Nine Winds flies through, but is not able to save the life of Pretty Prime, who ends up dropping. Chekio is still here. What a collapse from the Poppies. You pull 1 kill back if you're freshly forged, but a clean 5 from the Poppies and a double kill from Chekio to top it off.
What in the world just happened to Freshly Forged? That looked like it was going to be a great fight because Draco comes back in really, really low, has to transform right in front of everybody. Prime has ult, and you think, okay, Draco's just going to get squished like the cockroach he is at 200 HP. I've been watching a lot of Shark Tank, apologies.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mr. Wonderful, yeah?
I know, it's all been doing during isolation. But Prime decides to hold on to the ult, thinking the Whirlwind's going to be enough. The taunt is late for Mr. Crunchy, so they don't CC chain him there. Then Prime realizes, oh crap, I should have ulted. I'm going to turn around and ult Casper the Friendly Ghost in the jungle as everyone's collapsing in. I mean, that should have been perfect, Dave. I mean, they got Warchi's ultimate. They group everybody up. Marcus does nothing in that team fight before dying, and it still manages to go poorly for Freshly Forged. A bunch of kills for the Poppies. Gold Fury on top of that. And those are the mentally breaking fights as well, where you go, hey boys, what happened there? And someone's going to have the awkward silence. Prime's going to go, I should have ulted. I thought we would kill him. It's just, it breaks your mental, those sorts of fights. Now Chekio has a 2-level lead. Brutal for Freshly Forged. Yeah. It's going to be tough for them to come back from that.
Well, you know, Mr. Wonderful's all about his numbers, so how do these numbers sound to you? I mean, 10 minutes into this game, you've got a 5,000 gold lead, a 6-kill lead. Warchi has 3 kills on the board on a Freya that's supposed to come online later on. Now Chekio with 3 kills in his back pocket. Those numbers seem good to me on paper. I think the Poppies, they're sitting pretty here moving into this mid-game.
Yeah, for once, I don't need to offer a royalty deal. I think the valuation is fair, and I'm pretty happy with where it is. I'd like to make an offer. And for Freshly Forged, that team fight went really poorly, and it hasn't looked like it's going to get any better. So for those reasons, I'm out.
Well, Freshly Forged have a few minutes to wait before they can hit that F6 I'm out button. But they'll have to try to weather this storm here. You know, I don't think all is lost just yet. I mean, on their side, Fails is going to try to find an engagement onto Marcus, but the Fear No Evil doesn't connect. I mean, it's the age-old question, Aggro. I mean, is this turtle and farm and hope to find a pick here and there if you're Freshly Forged?
I mean, you're down, what, 6K already? 7K nearly? I mean, you're in a bad spot for sure, so you're really looking to find people who are being over-aggressive, and maybe it's Warchi, but doesn't seem that way. Marcus on the way for the little bit of late-game cleanup. Marcus finds that, and now Pretty Prime is getting caught out in the jungle.
That's another Spirit of the Nine Winds that doesn't quite connect onto his intended target, but Draco Marino, looking for more, is going to leap on in. Callus is going to escape the onslaught that was arriving from the Poppy, so one more kill onto Okeanos on the Anhur, 0-4, a rough game to be anywhere near that duo lane, and you can see the confidence, and for good reason, that the Poppies are playing with here. Okeanos was just chilling beneath his tier 1 tower, trying to farm, trying to get some semblance of gold and experience on his side, and Poppy's free and clear to move in. Ended up being, 3-4 man dive, but I think they could have gotten it done with less. And this is methodical, and this is something sort of Mifflin brought up in our last game, is Mr. Crunchy is going to get locked down here, and Marcus snags the kill. There are so many non-respawning objectives still on the map that this goes from bad to worse. It's not like you're in late game for Freshly Forged and sitting beneath your Phoenixes and trying to defend that. There's still 4 towers and then some respawning objectives for the Poppies to take.
Yeah, it's bad at this point, no doubt. And look, this composition for Freshly Forged, I kind of went over what they want to do. It's pull Purification Beads and then punish you with a big ultimate for it. And these types of compositions are some of my favorite at a competitive level. That's what that's what I wanted my team to always be playing. We didn't always play it, but if I had the choice, it's what we would have been playing. But these compositions really struggle when they fall behind more so than others, because you get beads by being threatening, by having an advantageous position in the first place, knowing that, okay, I can't eat this Athena taunt because I'm going to die if I don't, so I have to beads, and then we can reset, we can back up, and we can afford to play slow. That's a big thing about these types of compositions, is it requires you to put work in ahead of time and then reap those rewards later. But when you're down 8K at 13 minutes, you don't have later. There is no later. Later, you're eating dinner. You're thinking about what went wrong in the set. And so these types of comps really, really struggle right now. There's no threat to the Poppies. They can do whatever they choose in these team fights.
Levels and gold-wise, we're in the late game already if you're the Poppies. Callus is under duress. Spirit of the Nine Winds tags maybe a smidge of damage onto Draco Marino, but he's going to walk away from that one free and clear. It's a level 12 Kukulkan as well as a level 12 Draco Marino there, so plenty of damage to be shrugged off. What is the earliest Fire Giant you've ever seen?
We saw a team attempt a 10-minuter one time, when it spawns it spawns right at 10, so right around then, and it did not work. They tried to buy Frenzy. I believe it was a Shadow Q team. I think they bought Frenzy and they tried to rush it as soon as it spawned, and it did not work. I think the earliest successful one I've seen was probably around 11 or 12 minutes, right in that area. And a game very similar to this, where you just are so far ahead that it's gonna be really, really impossible for them to stop you.
I brought it up because I think the Poppies probably well within their rights to maybe give it a shot, but I think playing smart, realizing plenty of objectives for them still to secure on the map, and they're just going to look for these individual picks, force out some ultimates here and there, get this right side lane pushing. Tier 2 tower is going to get chipped away. A bit split, though. This is a 4 versus 3. A great Fear No Evil finds an engagement onto the Poppies, but Marcus makes his way over the wall And what looked promising to start off suddenly has gone by the wayside. Cheikheo can rejoin these fights very quickly with that ultimate, so certainly can't count him out. Okeanos, you shouldn't be within reaching distance of that Freya, and he realizes that for the 5th time this game as Warchi finds the solo kill. Still a tier 2 fight going on the right-hand side of this map. Warchi looking to maybe take a free tier 1 tower once the minions are in range. You can see what Freshly Forged were looking for there, aggro, but nothing came of it.
No, it's the right idea. I mean, we got Marcus's beads in mid with that taunt earlier on, so let's drop Fear No Evil onto him, but even with him tanking up the tier 2 tower, Prime wasn't in range to deal his damage in time, and Fails is just so far behind that he's not going to be dealing relevant damage at this point anyways, so it's pretty, it's the right idea from Freshly Forged. The pieces are working, it's just that they're a little bit out of date. You know, they need the newer model.
Right. And the tier 2 tower, if nothing else, is at least left standing on the right side of the map for Freshly Forged. Pyromancer had been secured, so not up to take now if you're the Poppies. Looks like maybe back, spend some of that gold, get yourself a little bit more in control before moving on to capture some more of these objectives. A open mid lane Phoenix 16 minutes into this game, a 12,000, 11,000 gold lead now for the Poppies. We're starting to get to that point where now you have to think about a Phoenix defense. Up to this point, you at least had some towers standing. But 16 minutes in, you only have 2 towers left.
And their Phoenix defense is pretty good on the side of Freshly Forged. They have Athena. It's really easy to just taunt the frontliners, pull them deeper into the tower than they really want to be. They've got Kukulkan, who's the premier Phoenix defender, if not Merlin. Those two, you know, he's in top 2 as far as mages go on the defense. You have a lot of good tools if you weren't down 11k at this point. If you weren't down by that much, I would think that, okay, you know, the enemy team has Fire Giant, we're down 7k at 34 minutes. That's a winnable game for Freshly Forged. This is a 0.2% chance of victory in my mind for Freshly Forged. We're in that.
Yeah, you like calling them 1%ers. This one is probably less than that. 2 more members fall from Freshly Forged and a Fire Giant secured to boot from the Poppies. Right side has the minions pushing in, so it's looking like the primary target here for the Poppies. 2 members down from Freshly Forged with 20 seconds and some change on those respawn timers. And if Poppies find an engagement, this could just be game, and it might be anyway, aggro. 5 members barreling down, looking for the Titan, who shreds out of the ice. Blink in from Fails, finds 5 members with that Fear No Evil, but they have no damage to return. This is looking like game. Spirit of the Nine Winds has no peel. And 18 minutes in, the Poppies blow Freshly Forged out of the water.
That is as fast of a game as you will ever see. 18 minutes flat, perfectly on the clock. And this is, look, I get it. You don't have Deathwalker, you don't have Joshi. It shouldn't matter that much. It just shouldn't. It shouldn't be this bad for Freshly Forged. And I don't know what's going on. It's actually mind-boggling that this team is struggling this much. Because they should be better than this, Dave. Even without 2 premier side laners, obviously Okeanos did not have a good game. That to say the very least. He got bodied by Warchi very heavily. But the vast majority of where that game went wrong was on that fight by Poppy's purple buff, and that was a 5-man engagement. So you can't really put it on the side laners here if you're Freshly Forged. I don't think that you can just write this one off as unwinnable in that sense. This is, maybe you could say we were going to lose anyways, but you got to do better than that, man. You got to do better than 18 minutes.
Well, this is sort of that engagement where things really start to spiral out of control. They even find the first kill, you know, some back and forth. This is the kind of last half of that engagement. Look how healthy they are.
Why are we not just flattening Draco in that spot? And then we got to chase. We got to go into lane. Everyone ends up dying for it. It just, Freshly Forged is not playing good Smite right now across the board. And then you add in 2 subs instead of 2 of the best players in the SCC and Deathwalker and Joshi. You're going to have a bad time. That's what we saw today, a bad time. Well, at the very least, you got to give them some credit. Their bad time only lasted 18 minutes, so it could have been a longer bad time, at least in Game 1.
Yeah, we could have extended that out a little bit further, but Poppies, They make no mistake about this one. Freshly Forged, again, I was thinking they might look to keep some momentum going into this week. That has been immediately stifled in game number 1. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll see if the Poppies can replicate their performance and take this set. I appreciate you sticking around after that quick break. You're still watching the SCC week number 3, and we're still over here in Europe with the Poppies versus Freshly Forged. Aggro, I think uncontested is maybe a fair way of talking about game number 1. 18 minutes and methodical through and through if you're the Poppies. You find an early advantage, and then a bit of a fumble of a fight maybe from Freshly Forged loses you the game in the long run. How do you make your way back mentally here for game number 2?
I don't know. I really don't. I don't have a doctorate in psychology, because that's, I think, what you would need at this point, because it's looking rough for Freshly Forged. And I do want to be sure that we give the Poppies the correct amount of credit, because they've been playing really, really well basically all year so far. This team did not make a single mistake once they got that lead. They strangled Freshly Forged out of that game very, very quickly, didn't give them an option to get back in. So I know a lot of my discussion in particular was centered around making sure that, you know, how surprised I am with the way Freshly Forged is playing, or the lack thereof, really, in all honesty. But I think the Poppies deserve a lot of credit as well, and I want to make sure that doesn't go unnoticed.
Yeah, I think so. On both sides of the coin, you got to boost the good of the Poppies as we've seen it, and they're a team that will be very competitive and have been and will continue to be very competitive here in this EU region. I don't know if you can really even hang what happened in the previous game on picks and bans if you're Freshly Forged, so I don't know if there's a whole world that you need to change. I mean, you look at their draft in the previous game, I don't think it was a particularly bad one. It just started to snowball out of control. They're going to take away the Chernobog this time, still hell banned out. But another first pick, Fafnir here for the Poppies, worked out for Draco Marino in game number 1.
And man, this is kind of where you look around and go, hey, Okeanos, can you play Freya? Because we don't want to give it over to Warchi.
We're going to find out. It looks like
they're going to find out one way or the other. I was going to say maybe it's for Prime in the mid lane, a little bit of shades of zeros, but looks like that won't be the case as they lock in the Merlin for him. So this is the question. Can Okeanos play that Freya? It's not a god that I think slots into every composition. It's not a god that I think that every hunter can automatically play. It's a different sort of play style to really optimize it. I mean, I'm sure anybody who's going to be playing at this level has put games in on Freya, feels like they can play her, but being you kind of have to be a specialist in order to play Freya. There's a certain play style that really likes that type of god. We'll find out if Okeanos fits under that mold.
He will hope to at least get a kill on board here in this game. And again, you know, we keep saying his name. I don't think game number 1 is one that you can really hang entirely on Okeanos. I mean, a rough slash line, but certainly nothing that he was the reason, the sole reason, rather, that Freshly Forged lost. So giving him a chance on what could potentially be a hyper carry in the form of Freya. Athena locked in by Freshly Forged as well. The question is always, though, Aggro, when you have a Freya, a magical ADC, and then a magical power mage in the mid lane, where do you make up that discrepancy then in the physical power? I mean, obviously, jungle and solo lane is really what's left.
I agree, and it looks like the Poppies aren't super worried about it because they ban away 2 more Guardians, making sure that Kalas doesn't get exactly what he wants in these drafts, but that would have left them with 4 magical. Feel like you're pretty happy with that if you're the Poppies, so I don't know how much I like their bans. I think I would have liked something really towards something like Ratatosker, which this pick makes a ton of sense to me. Freshly Forged has not been able to get to late game at all in most of the games that we've seen them play so far this year. So let's give them the early game win in a box. That's Ratatosker. He just delivers you the early game as long as you play it well enough. And this is the perfect pick for Fails in order to try and get the ball rolling in some sort of positive direction on Freshly Forged side.
I didn't even see Mac back there. She was just chilling on the bed the whole time. I love that. And unfortunately,
was that blocking her the whole time?
Yeah.
That's
a little bit unlucky.
Right there. You hate to see it.
That's all right. We were wondering, though, where that physical power would come from, and it is a Ratatosker and a King Arthur for the final 2 picks here from Freshly Forged. 2 gods that supply plenty of physical power. Do you like the way Freshly Forged have drafted here around that Freya? You sort of talked about you need a specific comp to slot in. Do you think Freshly Forged have done that?
I don't know. I mean, I'm a little bit worried about their ability to get towers if they do get a lead, because they don't have a very good tower killer. Maybe, I was thinking maybe in the Soul Lane you could go something like Erlong Shan to try and get it working, but just doesn't end up being the case. I feel like that would have been the safer option to try and get some sort of tower damage going in your favor.
Well, interestingly enough, I say whoa sort of over your sentence there, because there's, a bit of a lane swap. I guess role-wise, they put Chekio on that Hu Yi in the mid lane, which is not super uncommon to see, but Warchi will be playing the Kukulkan here in this long lane. Is that maybe a direct response to having to lane against a Freya?
Could be. It could just be that Chekio really prefers the Hou Yi in comparison to Warchi. Chekio spent a lot of time as a hunter player, even as early as last year, so he's comfortable on the physical hunters. Might just feel like they do a good job of flexing their compositions around. Maybe they feel like the Kukulkan can play safer, but I feel like Hou Yi should have kill potential up against the Freya, whereas I really feel like Warchi should not on this Kukulkan. And after how much Warchi dominated this lane, I feel like I'd want to just give him the most kill potential we can. I think the mental damage has certainly been done in that lane to give Warchi all that confidence and probably take away a lot of Okeanos' confidence. Surprised this is the way they put it out there, for sure.
And, I might even be a little bit concerned. Obviously, Draco Marino has sort of a dash ability, and Warchi can, speed himself up on that Kukulkan. I might be a little bit concerned now about the potential for a gank from Fails and the inability maybe to completely disengage for Warchi. You have the beads, but maybe an easier time ganking for Fails to get this duo lane online for Freshly Forged.
I agree. I think that this is a risk that Fails could certainly punish the Puppies for, but if Okeanos gets ahead, can you really leverage that as well as you would like? That's kind of the question. Fails might want to spend more time with Prime in the mid lane, knowing that Prime can do the dirty work should he get ahead. The jungler mentality, is it worth my time to go over there and set this guy up for success? Can't you just hear Mifflin saying that? In your head?
I was gonna.
That's the check. Yeah.
Is that exact wording? Is it really worth my time? Not like what is the cost benefit? It's the worth my time. No. I think that really made that one a little bit more realistic. We'll have to check in.
It's that arrogance, It's the arrogance of the jungler that really comes through. That's what permeates all their thoughts. Is it worth my time? Because their time's worth the most by far, for sure.
There's no bias in that statement whatsoever from you or the jungler. I think realistic from all accounts. We'll have to check in on the duo lane though and see if Freshly Forged are maybe able to capitalize on some of the disadvantages, and if Poppies are maybe able to push some of what they've brought into this duo lane though. I am intrigued. A lot of solo lane has just become kind of chilling, farming, a gank comes your way, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But between the Vamana and a King Arthur, what does that lane kind of look like to you?
Pre-5, it's a lot of playing it very slowly, because King Arthur is not super strong pre-5. He's very, very mana hungry. He doesn't have any built-in sustain. He gets all his sustain from Gladiator Shield. And so for King Arthur, you kind of want to play the pre-5 fairly slowly. Post-5 with Glad Shield, Mr. Crunchy should be able to get at least a little bit of an advantage, but Vamana's kind of there to stalemate the lane the majority of the time anyways. He's got so much movement speed. He's got a long, quick dash that's able to get him out of most situations that he might find himself in. I feel like this is a matchup where Creed should be just kind of chilling. Maybe we can get some invades off, go to the enemy back camps if we can, because he should just be a little bit too mobile for Mr. Crunchy to really kill him.
Okeanos taken low and taken down as Marcus. Instead, it's the Poppies who find that early jungle pressure into the long lane. Okeanos takes the first death of this game 4 minutes in, goes over to Marcus as well, and that's rough. The jungler getting the first kill, if you're Freshly Forged, that's going to have spread impact all over the map.
That's tough, because Okeanos had his beads, just didn't really think he needed to use them, even after the horrific emblem there from Draco. Maybe if he beads us towards the back end, that could have made a difference. Didn't see exactly where his banish went. You can banish that dodgy off of you pretty easily. Don't think Marcus was 5 on that gank, so you don't have to worry too much about the ultimate. But Okeanos takes another spill and ends up behind yet again, though. Again, I think that up against the Kukulkan, it's a lot less punishing to be behind than it is up against the Hou Yi. I'm just kind of surprised that the Poppies gave Okeanos as free of a lane as you can without jungler presence, of course. The Kukulkan is not going to be an aggressive lane opponent.
The opposite of how you would want this one to start if you're freshly forged. Certainly not dire at the moment with the 700 or so gold lead. Marcus is locked down, so the gold lead could sway one way or the other. A couple locked in with the chains, and he might pull back in Mr. Crunchy, but Marcus is going to drop down and try to disengage from this fight. Fails, comes crashing down into the backline, but it's a one-level lead for Marcus and Draco Marino. He's there for a little bit of peel, but fails, uses the beads, and turns around the damage. Marcus goes down. Creed right there in range. Could turn around some damage of his own, but fails some good sidesteps. Chekio drops the Huyi ultimate, but it's Draco Marino instead who swings his way back and grabs the kill. Mr. Crunchy is able to grab some damage onto Draco Marino, but Pretty Prime is here to play. Chekio low. Chekio jumps out. And it looks like that's all she wrote. A 2-for-1 in favor of Freshly Forged.
That was a beautiful play there by Fails. He's really playing with fire going in against Marcus. Marcus uses his 2 as knock-up immunity when Fails dunks him, which is perfect. And Marcus plays that pretty well, but Fails just able to really not only escape and kill Marcus for a while, but force Draco to short jump instead of long jump away. If Draco feels like he can trust Creed's going to get that, he could just jump away pretty far and make sure Mr. Crunchy doesn't kill him. But because Creed was so low on mana, he'd already extended the 2 and it got blocked by the wall. It was going to be difficult for him to kill Fails, so Draco does the right call. He sacrifices himself for the enemy jungler, but I'm sure he would have preferred to just jump away.
And the gold lead was 500 or 600 for the Poppies going into that engagement, but essentially negligible here at this point as this game is brought maybe right back to even. And if you're either team, at this point, 7 minutes into the game, you sort of look at early game transitioning into mid game and then late game. If you're the Poppies or Freshly Forged, who's feeling maybe most comfortable with the fact that this game is still even at 7 minutes?
I think both teams are pretty comfortable with it. I think both teams scale fairly well into the late game. My big concern with the Poppies composition is they don't have a whole lot of guaranteed CC. They've got a lot of single target CC and Ho Yi stun, but that's pretty easy to juke. You've got Fafnir Hammer, again, single target, fairly easy to juke. So who is Marcus really going to be consistently pulling with that Powwow among the backline carries? I mean, Prime has no CC immunity in the kit, so that makes it easier. But you still feel like that's going to be pretty tough for Marcus to make this impact as the game goes later and later. But Freshly Forged, at the same time, they have a rat, and that's just not going to translate nearly as well into the late game. Marcus is playing Da Ji, who's one of the best late game assassins. Let's take the ultimate out of it. Every single of our abilities scales at 100%. So you're chilling when it comes to playing Da Ji late game. I think both teams are very medium with this game going late.
Right. Well, Marcus was chilling, but back around the corner is going to drop some chains, but does not connect onto anybody, so maybe a well-thought-out gank, but Fails is there for the counter gank. Draco Marino has to burn the disengage. Marcus caught between a rock and a hard place, and Okeanos rotates and finds the kill. Warchi was maybe on a rotation, but thinks twice of it, makes his way back over into that long lane, but suddenly Fails and Okeanos deep in the Poppy side of the jungle near this red buff, and they're going to try to find some extra kills for their favor. 4 members of Freshly Forged in. Spirit of the Nine Winds connects on the Khalas, chunks down about a third of his health, close to half, but Freshly Forged is going to be able to disengage without losing anyone else and find one more kill to boot.
I like the idea for Marcus, but you got to be accurate with that Powwow if you're going to try and make that play. He misses all 3 shots, doesn't put any pressure on the Freshly Forged. They can feel very comfortable stepping up and being aggressive in that moment, and as soon as that happens, it's going to be tough for him to get out of danger, and Fails is able to chase him down.
And I was curious, and we obviously have talked a good bit about this Kukulkan in the long lane. One of the big things that kind of came to mind outside of just how this laning phase looks is, obviously for objective secure and big team fighting ultimates, you want your Kukulkan to be able to rotate in. It's going to be a little bit longer in some of these fights for Kukulkan to be there just because of where they've positioned him.
Agreed, and it's going to take him for a little bit to be that huge impact. It used to be that this long lane was miles ahead of mid lane and farm. That just really hasn't been the case in Season 7 so far. Mids and ADCs have been fairly close together for the most part, so you don't really get that massive level lead advantage. I still feel like the way that the Poppies have positioned their gods is hindering their comp. a little bit, but clearly not too much. I mean, they're still very, very close to even in this game. It's for all intents and purposes an even game, but it's something that you got to keep an eye on as you're watching right now. Is every mid 3v3 fight, think, would it be better if we have the Kukulkan here instead of the Hou Yi? Every time Okeanos is stepping up and doesn't have beads or doesn't have ult, think, would it be better if Orchi was that Hou Yi? It's certainly a thought you gotta consider.
Well, if nothing else, as you point out, it is somewhat close to even, about a 300 gold differential there. And Okeanos with the kill on the board here, I mean, I guess that's where you want your Freya to be. About 10 minutes in, in an ideal world, you have 3 kills on the board. Back to that in just a moment as Fails finds the ultimate down onto Draco Marino. Chekio deleted by Pretty Prime as he looks to disengage from the fight. Marcus takes to the pillar, but he's got 4 members of Freshly Forged awaiting his downfall. Pulls in 3. It's a beautiful ultimate from Marcus and may actually have just saved his life, but there's no one there from the Poppies to capitalize, and one more pick goes over to Freshly Forged.
And this is exactly what I was talking about when it comes to just giving you the early game in a box in the Ratatosker. Fails has been a part of every kill so far for Freshly Forged. He's been pushing the pace nicely, and it's set Freshly Forged up in a far better spot. This game was over, effectively, at this point last time. It's been a big difference so far as Warchi decides he doesn't want to be on the map anymore, so I'm just going to run forward and face check gold all by myself. Draco was coming on the long flank, so needed to come in by himself and got deleted for it.
Could be bad to worse here if you're the Poppies. Gold Fury started up down to about half health. Mr. Crunchy is playing Peel, but 3 members of the Poppies are looking towards him. Freshly Forged are able to lock down that Gold Fury. Creed unable to escape. Draco Marino looking to burn down Mr. Crunchy, who is moving into that front line position as Chekio gets himself out of this fight. 1 more member down and a Gold Fury secured. That's a big turnaround and a big lead now. About 3k gold, 2.5 maybe for Freshly Forged.
Just an odd series of decisions by the Poppies, and this is how you get really, really far behind really quickly. Let's go all the way back. We lost Chekio, he got picked by Fails in Prime, and a good ultimate by Fails. Then everyone from Freshly Forged starts walking over towards that Gold Fury. The lead at that point was 800 gold, let's say. Very small. Then let's say they just get Gold Fury. We give that up. We let them. We split waves. We just push out wide as maybe we could just end up falling down a little bit. Or we can walk in, lose a whole bunch of members, lose a whole bunch of map pressure, spend a whole bunch of time not farming. If Freshly Forged is still going to get the objective because they've got the map control, now we're down 3k instead of 1,200, 1,400. It's an early Gold Fury.
Right.
It's not worth that level of investment. I think the Poppies let the moment get the better of them a little bit there, and they've got to just relax a little bit. That was not a game-breaking Gold Fury if they just gave it up. Now, it might be. Now that might be the difference.
And they're going to get a Pyromancer. Kalas is taken low. Freshly Forged the one securing the Pyro, but Poppy is looking for a bit of a fight here. Mr. Crunchy is half health, but he's 2 levels ahead of Creed, who is doing some poking there, poking and prodding on the side. Chekio thought about maybe an aggressive jump there, but turns his tail and moves his way back into that middle lane. Marcus, man, I think he has just had a tough time. Every time I've seen that ultimate, it's been on the defensive side, more recently in the solo lane, so he doesn't have it here. Might get dropped down upon by Fails. Draco Marino instead turns around the damage. Some peel from Warchi sends the Spirit of the Nine Winds through and makes Freshly Forged think twice. All of a sudden, the Poppies on a tear. Find 2 kills. They only lose 1 member. It's a small win, but maybe a win nonetheless as we stand.
Beautiful fight by the Poppies, and it's really just a little bit of an overextension by Fails, not knowing exactly how much damage he's going to do at that point and how much damage Marcus is going to be able to put back onto him. Prime ends up walking into a whole bunch of damage at the very end of that. You're taking 2-for-1s all day if you're the Poppies, especially when it's mid-jungle. And it's really the 2 characters who have given you the most trouble so far in Prime and Fails. But there is a silver lining for Freshly Forged, and that's that Okeanos has gotten himself another kill. He's 3-1. He's hit the massive power spike that is the hastened ring for the Freya. He's up 2 levels right now on Warchi, who's been completely ineffective so far this game. So that's going to be something that the Poppies have to keep their eye on, is what Okeanos is doing on this Freya, because you can't just let him free cast in these team fights when he's this far ahead.
You can sort of feel the vibe maybe that Freshly Forged are going for off the back of a lot of what you bring up there. I mean, Mr. Crunchy has joined some of these fights and made a big difference now. 2 levels ahead of Creed on that King Arthur. 203 is his slash line. Okeanos at 3-1-1. You know, if there's enough peel for Mr. Crunchy and then Okeanos has enough uptime in these fights, they've been going well for Freshly Forged. I am curious, though, about how if you're Creed here in this case, as I mentioned, he is now about 1 level down. You look at how he's itemized up to this point. We were wondering maybe if there was too much magical power for Freshly Forged. We'll be able to touch on that point in just a second as Fails has ganked the long lane. Chekio finds a kill elsewhere. Fails makes good on the presence that he brought into that long lane, but it is a 1-for-1 trade. Map-wise, the Poppies pull one back, but how are you itemizing here if you're Creed? I mean, are you concerned enough about Mr. Crunchy's damage and Fails' damage to build a bunch of extra armor?
Yeah, I think you have to be somewhat aware of it. I think the breastplate that he's picked up is really perfect in that sense, because it's a hedge against that physical damage. It also gives him the cooldown that he really wants, and from here on out, let's focus on magical defense, I think is the call. Is a beautiful stun by Chekio. Actually gets the beads out from Fails, but he's still in trouble.
Oh, that's a great dunk down from Fails. Locks down a couple, gets himself and Kalas both a kill on the board. So Freshly Forged, you know, they had been stumbling over the last couple of minutes, and maybe an overstatement, but a couple 2-for-1 trades, some 1-for-1s, things looking at least a little bit brighter for the Poppies. But now a great gank from Fails on this Ratatosker snags another couple.
And it was a great taunt by Kalas as well that really set all of that up and made it pretty easy for Fails to find that double dunk. Couple interesting build decisions, though, as I was looking over after Creed, your question about Creed. Got to highlight some of these. A shell pickup for Okeanos, not usually what you see for the carries. Usually that's an Aegis in that slot. I like it here because it's risky against the Kukulkan. Not having Aegis against the Spear of the Nine Winds is a death sentence. Shell is not going to save you there. But against Vamana, it's very good. Against Daji, it's very good because getting block sets against those auto attacks is really what you're looking for up against those types of characters. And
no way.
No.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Draco Marino tosses in the one and steals
Dave,
away
this
the
is what
Fury.
I'm talking about, man. How can a team that has Fails, Prime, and Kalas with that much SPL experience not body block a Fafnir hammer on a Gold Fury? It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's like watching Usain Bolt go out to run a race and he trips on his front step and can't walk. Like, this is basics, man. This is basic stuff. You body block the Fafnir hammer. It doesn't do AoE damage. He just walked up slowly and hammered, and he stole it. I don't care about this solo kill. This is absurd. I know they're probably going to win this game anyways, but they don't deserve to. No team that gets gold stolen by a hammer deserves that. What is going on?
Well, you know, at least they're winning the fight here in the middle lane, and that is maybe even up for debate as it's a 2-for-2. A big swing, though, for the Poppies as Draco Marino just standing there menacingly was enough to secure that Fury. Taken low, though, so some reparations from Freshly Forged as the fight after the Fury goes 3-for-2 in favor of Freshly Forged. Gold lead still hovering around that 2,500 mark. Still seems like momentum is in favor of Freshly Forged. But there's obviously still some confidence for the Poppies, and maybe even a tier 2 2-versus-3 here that the Poppies might be looking for to try to defend their tower. Creed has the Colossal Fury and is going to use it here. Tier 2 tower is very low. The reinforcements are in. Warchi doesn't have the Spirit of the Nine Winds, so he won't have the massive chunk damage maybe that he's looking for. Smart attempt maybe from the Poppies, but doesn't quite work out.
Thank God that team fight was long, man. I needed every second of that.
I had to give you a second there, right?
To bring it down. Okay, been inside a little bit too long. We're relaxed, you know. We're feeling good.
We forgot how to interact with people, right?
Right, yes. Okay, other things to talk about in this game. How about how well Mr. Crunchy's played? He's played really well so far in this King Arthur. Right there, Marcus is going to be able to get in and do a lot of damage underneath that tier 2, but he got canceled out by a really quick interrupt there by Mr. Crunchy. This King Arthur has been solid so far, and that's certainly a difference from his Athena last game. And if he continues to do this, then going to be pretty good.
There is an air of confidence around the Poppies as they're going to at least try to peel off this Pyromancer. Aggro, you loved watching it the first time, and maybe going to get a chance to look at that steal a second time as Pyromancer is going to get finished off by Freshly Forged.
Do we have to? Look, man, if he jumps, that's one thing. If he jumps, that's fine. That's totally cool. Like, I'm down with that. I don't know, bro. I don't
just waddles away. That's the best.
I just don't get it. Like, why does anyone have to be... We've got so many people there. Why is anyone looking at the Gold Fury? Like, Kalas is auto-attacking the Gold Fury. Turn around, homie. Right. Put yourself between the Gold Fafnir and the Gold Fury. You don't have to be auto-attacking it. You're Athena. I don't know. I can't do it.
It was a field goal-sized gap there that Draco Marino was able to punt on through. I think luckily, as you pointed out, though, that, as maybe infuriating as it is to watch, it hasn't bitten Freshly Forged all that much, as they've extended their lead now to 3,800 gold here about 20 minutes into the game. Not necessarily dire, though. I mean, we saw a 10k gold lead much sooner on in our previous game, so the Poppies still have an avenue in. But at least I appreciate from Freshly Forged that after a small sidestep like a Fury being taken away, and you can see the slight uptick in the XP and the gold differentials, they haven't let that get them down necessarily. They move right back in, they take the Pyromancer, and are still, I would say, in the driver's seat of this one.
All of that is true, Dave. All of it. I just can't get away. I can't get away from it, man. Okay, I gotta move on because
I'm throwing you a life ring.
I know. I can't. I don't want to swim, Dave. I want to drown in here in this misery that I'm surrounded by. That's when you assume I want to live, but I don't in this moment. But the Poppies, look, they're down about 4K, but they haven't had a real full 5-on-5 team fight quite yet, and I'm still concerned about their inability to have guaranteed CC on targets. I think that Warchi's Kukulkan is still going to struggle in finding good ultimates with setup. He has 0 penetration in the build, so Mr. Crunch gets to do whatever he wants. Dave, it's like they're trying to make me mad with this game. They let a Gold Fury go to a Fafnir hammer with 4 people there. Warchi has 0 pen 22 minutes into the game, but he's found every book so far except for the one that has pen. It's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough for him to kill these frontliners, but maybe he's just looking for the objectives. The Poppy's trying to sneak this fire.
Look at this call. The Fire Giant starts up, but a couple members of Freshly Forged back in range. Spirit of the Nine Winds secures the Fire Giant for the Poppies. What a call as Marcus finds a kill as well. Kalas on the escape. Oni for FG. Poppies will take that every day.
That's huge, and that's a great call by the Poppies. And again, it just feels like a rookie mistake by Freshly Forged. We know that they've got a Kukulkan. We know that they've got a Fafnir. What do those characters do? What is their calling card on those characters? It's objectives. That's what these characters do best. And the Poppies just waltz on over towards the right side. Not a lot of ward coverage there from Freshly Forged at the time. And they grab a Fire Giant right on time with that Oni Fury. It's a great call by the Poppies, but Freshly Forged just shouldn't be falling for that. In my mind, that should have been something they're considering at all times. Once we're at this point, the Poppies are now in a beautiful position to take this game because they've got gold left on the map to take. If they just take towers, they don't have to worry about Phoenixes. They just take towers. They're ahead in this game, just like that. And don't forget, Freshly Forged still have Ratatoskr jungle, so their jungler's not scaling nearly as well as this Dodgy for Marcus.
And you point out the towers, and I think interestingly enough, at least interesting to me, is that prior to 2 towers falling just now for Freshly Forged, both in that short lane, so short lane Phoenix is open for the Poppies to maybe take. The towers weren't even in this game. They were tied up at 4. Suddenly the Poppies take a 2-tower lead. Gold differential still at about 1,500, but it was much higher just prior to that Fire Giant. It seemed like Freshly Forged had the lead XP and gold-wise, but maybe that intangible map pressure still just wasn't quite there for Freshly Forged. And now Poppies, that they, as you point out, they have all these towers still for the taking. Likely this tier 2 is going to fall very quickly. It's going to be a left side Phoenix open. This is methodical and smart play from the Poppies.
I think so too. They've got to try and get this lead going though with this Fire Giant. It looks like they're not going to waste too much time. Let Marcus split up. Let's let him get this tier 2, but then start to siege these Phoenixes. But the problem is, in my mind, is that Warchi still, he had enough gold to buy a full item, still went with 0 pen. He's got 0 pen in the build, so he's not a threat to Mr. Crunchy or Kalas at all.
Draco Marino is going to pop that team stim. Look how low the left side Phoenix taken down almost immediately. Creed solo in the backline. Spear to the 9 wins, soars on through. And Chekio drops some shards down to secure the kill onto Mr. Crunchy. Fails just looking for an exit strategy, and he finds one, but Marcus a little bit too far forward. There's no Phoenix there left on defense, and that may have had the Poppies a little bit overconfident. They've lost a couple members. Draco Marino is able to burn down Fails on the re-engagement. Chekio back into a corner, and they're going to hope to finish off the kill. They haven't taken him down yet. He gets out alive. Draco Marino, the sacrificial lamb there for the Poppies. 3 members down for the Poppies, but they secure themselves a left side Phoenix. Warchi, no pen, no problem. Doesn't quite matter onto Pretty Prime, maybe. That's the first kill on the board for this Kukulkana. Left side Phoenix is down. This one is messy, aggro.
Yeah, little bit messy to say the least. But at the end of the day, Poppies get the most valuable Phoenix, the one furthest from the Fire Giant, so that sets up nicely for that right side. And you can see the power of the Polynomicon there for Warchi. Book of the Dead also helping him out in that instance. And if he's only going to be hitting backliners, I guess the build is okay. It's not, by the way. Never build this. Like, ever. It's not good. But it works out in that exact instance. Prime caught off guard by that burst damage. Had Aegis available, just didn't use it.
Well, 26 minutes in, the gold lead has been erased, and the Poppies instead take control. Fire Giant buff just now falling off the final 2 members of the Poppies. And the path is clear here, aggro. I mean, let's rotate around. We snuck Fire Giant last time. Now we're I think, if you're the Poppies, confident in maybe taking a fight right around it. Plenty of secure with Warchi and that Spear to the 9 wins. A Pyromancer just to extend this lead a little bit further. Are you moving out to try to defend this, though, is the question, I think, if you're freshly forged.
I mean, you don't have great objective contest. The big thing is that you have Ratatosker ult, which is great at getting into the backline, but you don't have a good option to really steal away this objective. As Marcus going to get the beads there from Prime. He landed that one. That's going to be clutch. 160 seconds without that purification beads. Marcus is going to have his ultimate long before that. And as I already highlighted, Merlin, no CC immunity in the kit, so that should be a pretty free kill later on down the line.
And unfortunately, Fire Giant doesn't have 160 seconds to respawn if you're freshly forged. It is up now. Draco Marino is just going to play guard. A couple members of the Poppies did go back to base, so I think smart from Draco Marino to stand by just in case something sneaky was maybe attempted there from freshly forged. Fails is going to hang around this left-hand side, and the dance will commence here with Marcus being aggressed upon by Kalas. Instead, it's Draco Marino with 4 members of freshly forged random. He's going to take the transformation down to about half of his health. Warchi in the middle with Chekio on the left-hand side. Crunchy tries to find the damage, but Chekio is able to jump out. Okeanos in the back line getting destroyed by Creed, who shuts him down. Spear to the 9 wins, flies through. It's a 5 versus 4 advantage now if you're the Poppies. Pretty Prime taken low by Marcus, but fails way in the back line by the Poppies. Blue buff is able to take one back onto Chekio. So it's Hunter for Hunter here. Poppies still potentially looking for a rotation and maybe a fight.
And I don't think they know where Fails is. He's still lurking. Blood Shield still on him for a little bit, and Warchi is looking like a snack.
Pretty Prime instead gets some damage onto Marcus, so the fight rages on here with Fails. Some cooldowns available, jumps on in, but gets locked down just a little bit. Swirls around, Creed plenty tanky and plenty healthy enough to shrug off that damage. So Marcus gets taken down, and that's maybe all she wrote here. So no Fire Giant, and the question is answered. Freshly Forged are going to move out and try to defend.
And they do so successfully. They're going to have plenty of time to get this left side Phoenix back up. A couple things that fight. Draco just gets a great horrific emblem really early in that engagement, but he's way too far from everybody else. He frenzies. I don't think it hit anybody. Maybe it hit Creed on his team, but he didn't get a whole lot of value out of that relic. And then he's forced to jump away because he's just too far forward. And the Poppies should just be waiting on Marcus's ultimate cooldown. We just got beads from Pretty Prime. There is no need to fight until we are ready to ult him again. We've got pressure on the map. The Poppies have priority in that instance. It's kind of the way I like to think about it, where it's they have the option to make the first move, and Freshly Forged has to play around them a lot of the time. And Freshly Forged was gifted priority by the Poppies by Draco and Marcus being so far forward when they really don't need to be yet. All the Poppies need to do is group as 5 and stand at Fire Giant until Marcus's ult is back up. And then they get the opening move. They get to decide exactly where and when they want to fight. And it's really just how do we get Marcus from point A to point B being on top of Pretty Prime.
Hollis has taunted in Creed, so the fighting stance continues now for both sides. Marcus playing aggressively. I mean, they have relied on Draco Marino for a lot of their engage. If you're the Poppies, you've had him jump in, burn some of those actives, attempt to slow down some of Freshly Forged. There is some deep ward coverage, so Freshly Forged finds some of the rotation. Draco Marino first in, but first out as well. Creed has found himself in the back line. Colossal Fury doesn't save you from that. A nice shell as well from Freshly Forged, just to shrug off some damage. Marcus takes to the skies, but so does Fails, and he's found Chekio in the back line. But a beautiful Spirit of the Nine Winds helps heal for the Poppies mid laner. They pull back 1 kill as Fails goes down, but 3 members of the Poppies limping away from the fire pit.
And now Freshly Forged know that they don't have to worry about Sunbreaker or Spirit of the Nine Winds. Either one of those ultimates will cause some problems should it be dropped on the Fire Giant attempt. Losing Fails, that's the 30-minute rat. That's not a big deal.
Pull back in Kalis. Still plenty of poke damage from that Kukulkan to maybe dissuade Freshly Forged from fully engaging on this Fire Giant, and that looks to be the case. Look how low Okeanos is taken. Has to use the ultimate just to maybe secure his disengage. Back in comes Kalis, but the rest of his team is not looking to fight. So that is now the Athena ultimate that will not be available, at least for a little bit of time. And you can sense a bit of tension here, Ryan. Both teams maybe found a pick here and there, back and forth, but no clear advantage just yet coming out of all of these engagements.
It's been close. A lot of these fights have been very, very close so far, and Warchi has yet to find the really big Spirit of the Nine Winds. That last one was very good. It saves Chekio's life and insta-kills Fails, which is certainly worth his cooldown in that sense. But a lot of these types of games where we just dance around Fire Giant, we just kind of wait until the Kukulkan hits the 3-man ult, then we pack it up. And that's kind of the way these usually end. There's not great setup for Warchi, so it's going to have to be freehand in these fights, but that certainly is potential there for the Poppies to just end this game outright if Warchi finds one really, really good ult.
Almost 5 ultimates fully available now for the Poppies. Pyromancer will be locked down, buys them a little bit of gold and maybe some speed back to the Fire Giant should they choose to go back, but instead they're just going to look at the enhanced Fire Giant. They burn it quickly, down to half health. Spirit of the Nine Winds could be used to confirm, and it does. Fire Giant locked down by the Poppies. Plenty of damage on the back end as well. Fails has looked for the engagement and has only found death in the back line as the Poppies look to continue their onslaught. Creed makes his way in. 4 members trying to disengage with their lives for Freshly Forged. I'm not sure they're going to be able to do it. That hastened Katana swinging away for Vamana. Okeanos turns around to kill, so not all is lost just yet for Freshly Forged. Pretty Prime snags one as well, but low mana, low health equals death. If you're a Merlin, 3-for-3 trade. Fire Giant looking to just stay on. A couple members of the Poppies. Marcus falls as well. Draco Marino, the lone member left alive with the FG.
A little bit of lack of patience there by the Poppies and a great play by Okeanos. He really turns that whole fight around by getting his hands dirty. Yeah. He goes right into the teeth of the enemy team, kills Chekio, does a lot of damage before he's out. Warchi loses track of Pretty Prime in that fight. He gets blown up pretty quickly by that Merlin. And Mr. Crunchy and Kalas, what do you know? The 2 characters that get to do basically whatever they want in these team fights because of not great itemization against them. I know Warchi's eventually now picked up this Obsidian Shard, but if you're going to build every book, you're not building Soul Reaver. If that's the only one you're missing, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because that's the one that you really love as Kukulkan alongside Polynomicon and Book of Thoth. Because of that, it has Pen, it has a very relevant passive that killed these tanks. I think the lack of Soul Reaver is very, very noticeable on Warchi this game, and he sold his boots and he's picked up a Divine Ruin instead, which is understandable. There's a ton of lifesteal on the enemy team. You've got Prime going for this Typhon's Fang build, which I wanted to talk about before Draco Marino stole that Gold Fury, and I lost my mind. But this Typhon's Fang build is one that Prime has been trying out a lot. Yeah, way back when. On stream. And it's interesting to try and leverage this new purple boot start where you get this lifesteal innately. Then you add in the soul gem later on. Okeanos has one of these as well, one of these Typhon's Fangs. So these are their lifesteal boosters and a little bit of penetration there as well for both Prime and Okeanos. So Warchi feels like he needs that Divine Ruin. And I tend to agree with him, but I think it's time for this breastplate to go. You already have defense in the way of Book of the Dead. Let's just start one-shotting some tanks, baby. I mean, let's get a Soul Reaver in there and end this game sooner rather than later. I think that's the best way forward for Warchi's build.
And it felt like kind of an ideal fight there even for the Poppies. Fire Giant secured, and then the Spirit of the Nine Wind chunks down some good damage onto Freshly Forged as well. A big turnaround on the back end of that Fire Giant fight for Freshly Forged to keep this game within reach, but things could tilt one way or the other. Death timer's plenty long here as Creed will get ultied by Crunchy and drop down comes Fail. Spirit of the Nine Winds looking for some peel, chunks down some damage as Creed backpedals his way towards that red buff. Marcus takes to the pillar, doesn't pull anyone in just yet. Chekio is able to kite his way backwards, both him and Okeanos up into the air, and he's just quick enough to escape the damage. Some fireworks, but not a lot of flash in that one. Draco Marino still the lone member with that Fire Giant buff left alive, but it's only for another 30 seconds.
I love that trap laid by Freshly Forged on bottom right, letting Kalas be the initiator. Let's go in, let's get as many relics as we can, and look at how many relics are on cooldown now for the Poppies. No beads for Marcus, no relics at all for Chekio, no relics at all for Draco, no beads for Warchi. Look at the other side, just beads and sprint for Prime and Kalas, respectively. This should be a Freshly Forged fight. And I want to see them do that exact same thing that they just did. Find a pocket of the jungle that's not warded well by the Poppies, and let's set up shop. Let's camp it. Because eventually someone from the Poppies is going to walk in, and chances are pretty good that they're missing a relic whenever we find them. And if that's the case, they're going to die instantly.
Poppies are positioned sort of on the left side of the jungle right now. Luckily, Fire Giant still with 30 seconds left, so won't be snuck away underneath the Poppy's nose this time around. But it's maybe buying Freshly Forged just this, a positional advantage. Poppy's late to this right side jungle. Massive wave in the left lane may play a role later on as the left Phoenix still licking its wounds from being taken down earlier on. Enough tendency and maybe some slow play there from the Poppies avoids what could have been disaster as Freshly Forged move behind that Fire Giant pit. It is respawning now, so the fight would result in FG and likely game, depending on which team is worse for wear. Draco Marino, a touch caught out here, but it's going to jump his way back to safety. And Okeanos uses the Freya ultimate as well, back on cooldown. That's a big one to lose.
Yeah, that's a huge one to lose. I don't know if Okeanos just panicked a little bit there or what, but that is a big deal to lose that Valkyrie's Discretion at this point in the game, because that's your safety valve. That's your, I need to get out of this situation sort of option, and not having that is a really, really big deal. He's got a little bit of CDR, should have about 30% if he's got a purple pot. Or I guess they're not purple pots anymore, but a red pot. Still scary.
Well, the Poppies have a slight advantage for a couple of seconds until Mr. Crunchy is able to teleport back into this fight, but Spirit of the Nine Winds locks down Kalas. 5 versus 4 advantage. Mr. Crunchy has now joined the fight, and the Poppies are plenty low, but the damage isn't quite confirmed yet. A 3 for 2 as we stand as Pretty Prime pulls one back, but enough damage from Draco Marino sends the 2 carries of Freshly Forged to running. Warchi taken down, Chekio is down as well, so on one team, if you're Freshly Forged, you only have your 2 carries. If you're the Poppies, you're missing your 2 carries, so that might dissuade you from trying the FG.
That was close. That was very, very close. The Poppies almost ended up just wiping the game there, but I think they committed a little bit too heavily on the Kalas. A lot of resources and positional advantage expended, and I know I was saying I wasn't a fan of the Breastplate of Valor there for Warchi, but it turned up clutch in that moment because Fails is right on top of him. Warchi's able to live long enough to get a lot of his damage off. He does exactly the right thing, drop everything at your feet, and let them come and kill you if they have to, but they're going to take a lot of damage for it. He did that well up against Mr. Crunchy and Fails. simultaneously. And if Prime didn't end up escaping narrowly there, that would have been pretty close to that end game. But still feels like Freshly Forged have a chance. They still know that relics are down for Chekio. They know that relics are down for Draco. They've got a chance in this game, Dave, but every fight has been so close between these
Aggro,
two
last time we saw Freshly Forged attempt this Fury while Fire Giant was up, the Poppies snuck it away. Poppies are going to take down this Oni Fury, but the positioning of Freshly Forged much better to maybe attempt to lock down some of those respawning objectives in this right side jungle. Fire Giant will not be started. A couple members still respawning. Press the pause button that time for Freshly Forged, but the rotation path's now somewhat clear and obvious for the Poppies moving back into this right side jungle behind the Harpies, and Freshly Forged have drawn their line as a result. Mid lane Harpy pit is where they look to make their stand, and Draco Marino is just going to push back Hollis one more time. And 40 minutes into this game, 2 Fire Giants secured, both by the Poppies. And these fights have been, I call them even. I mean, the Fire Giant hasn't been secured. Both teams, maybe you lose 2 or 3 members. Poppies lose 1 less than Freshly Forged, but nothing has come of it. Both teams, if nothing else, have been able to stall this game out long enough to not completely lose, but fails in the mid lane could maybe be an opening for one side or the other.
These Oni waves are going to start putting pressure on Freshly Forged, and Fails does a good job of paying attention to that and clearing out this mid lane Oni wave. But the left one is the one you really have to worry about. It's furthest from you, and it's on the side where the Phoenix has gone down. So that Phoenix is the weakest Phoenix of the 3 that are standing. It's going to grow to be a very, very big minion wave, and as you highlight, no TP for 20 for Mr. Crunchy.
Fails still in the mid lane. A slight engagement there from the Poppies as Chekio is going to plug a little bit of damage down for Mr. Crunchy. Oni wave on the left side in the long lane, just stalled out by some of the standard minions from Freshly Forged. Fire Giant not quite started. They are standing literally on top of a ward, so Freshly Forged will not fall for that bait. Could be the opening here. Teleport is back up, and Mr. Crunchy is going to cancel his back. Fire Giant started, is going to cause that change of mindset. Creed, free fight in the backline here for himself. Fire Giant locked down by the Poppies, this time up into the air. Off to the side is Fails. Where does he choose to engage? Doesn't find anyone with the slam. Instead, Marcus is taken low, and Pretty Prime confirms the damage. Creed turns one right back around. Both junglers gone for both teams, but that's 4 members strong with the Fire Giant here for the Poppies. Collis locked down. Collis taken down. The Poppies, for the first time in a few minutes, have given themselves an advantage. 2 members likely to fall. Freshly Forged down just to Pretty Prime. Aggro, that could just be the game.
And the left side Phoenix fell to those minion waves all the while. That will be game. A deicide for the Poppies in a hard-fought victory. Certainly much harder than their 18-minute game number 1. But Freshly Forged just can't quite get the job done. I think that the composition for the Poppies certainly looks a little bit stronger towards this stage of the game. Prime was putting out phenomenal damage in the late game, but Okeanos really just couldn't afford to match it. Fails not finding the right target with that ultimate was huge in that team fight because it took a lot of the pressure off of the Poppies. If Fails, instead of trying to kill Marcus, just lands right on top of the backline, right on top of Chekio and Warchi, and then dashes away, then all that carry attention has to be paid to him. Instead, he kind of lets them continue to walk where they want in this team fight, and it allows them to just kind of wait it out. Kalas, again, taunts only Draco towards the back end, and it's a bit unlucky that he gets cleansed by that mantle, but you've got to know that mantle cleanse is coming, number 1. And number 2, even if you get that taunt off the whole way, how good is that for you, really? I feel like Kalas just could not find the best taunts throughout with consistency throughout this game. But better for Freshly Forged. Better.
Struggles.
They still lost the Gold Fury with 4 people to a Fafnir Hammer. 4 people.
And that was so, I mean, as far as the game goes, relative-wise, early in this game, I mean, this one ends up being 43, I mean, call it 45 minutes long. So much back and forth in this early game. In Aggro, it was, I think, after, I'm not saying this to call you out, but specifically how this game looked for so long, you were like, yeah, Freshly Forged still probably win this game, and by all metrics, should have maybe still won this game in the mid-game. I think you have to look at that Fire Giant that gets snuck away by the Poppies as maybe the biggest turning point in this one.
Absolutely. And again, I think that goes back to a lack of attention to detail by Freshly Forged and a great call by the Poppies. And those two things combined end up with a Poppies victory, but this should have been Freshly Forged. I think they Fails played the early game well. I know that I was highlighting that I don't think he had the best end game team fight, but he's right. Rat. You're not picking Rat to change the team fight 45 minutes in. You kind of have to have given the ball off at that point to somebody else. And Freshly Forged just couldn't end up closing the game from there. I think that the overall macro, between the draft and how they want to play the map, which objectives we're looking at certain times, all that has to be under the microscope for Freshly Forged, because right now they just aren't doing enough in that department.
Well, I agree. Here in Europe, so competitive top to bottom. Obviously, I think Belt Slap and Cold Llamas are kind of those two teams, obviously big names on both sides. Tough to look at maybe who you think these top few teams are going to break out as. Belt Slap 4-0. Cold Llamas have only dropped one game. I believe that was 2 Belt Slap Poppies now tied right in that mix. We're only a few weeks in here, but do these standings kind of show you what you expect?
Yeah, I think that this is what I mostly expected so far in Europe, but overall, Belt Slap is going to be the team that runs away with this, in my mind. Yes, you've got teams like Cold Llamas, but we saw how close that set, or really not close, that set really was earlier on today. I think that it's Belt Slap and Cold Llamas top 2, with Belt Slap clearly being the number 1. Poppies right underneath that alongside Snake Pit. Those are the teams that I expect to continue to perform well so far in this phase.
Sometimes all it takes is one game, maybe a sneaky Fire Giant steal or a Fafnir Hammer taking away a Gold Fury to make a difference in some of these bigger matchups. This region does kind of seem like a meat grinder into Belt Slap right now. I don't know what it's going to take to topple a team like that, especially early on in these splits. How important is a team like Belt Slap that obviously has great synergy and top talent, maybe most of all? Do you think at this point having that extra synergy is a big difference maker before some of the other teams just now forming are really able to build on that?
Yeah, I think synergy is a key, though. Belt Slap also has a bunch of players who haven't played together before. I think that the big thing is that you just can't expect to be really good right off the bat, no matter the talent level on your team. Take a look at Freshly Forged. They're the perfect example. I think that Cold Llamas has to still take that next step. I think they're considerably behind Belt Slap right now, as well evidenced by our first set of the day. So I think that these teams that are really putting the time in and practicing, I think it's very evident those teams are continuing to improve, and you can't just let your talent kind of take you all the way there like you might have been able to in years past.
I agree. As far as sets go, this one is quick at a 2-0. Game 1 really added to the speediness of this one, 18 minutes and then 43. But the Poppies are able to lock up this set 2-0 over Freshly Forged and finish off our European portion of the day. But we are only halfway done. We still got 2 sets to go through, both of them over in NA. You got Locked and Goated playing in back-to-back sets here today. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Finch and Myth will take you into it.